I never thought delivering groceries would change my life, but here I am, standing in the elevator of this upscale apartment building, my heart racing like I'm about to run a marathon. The building screams money with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and that subtle scent of expensive cologne that seems to permeate everything. I'm just Alex, 28 years old, wearing my standard delivery uniform of khaki pants and a polo shirt with the grocery store logo, pushing a cart full of organic produce and artisanal everything that costs more than I make in a week. The elevator dings softly as it reaches the 5th floor, and I take a deep breath. Apartment 5B. I've been making deliveries here for 3 months now, and every single time, my palms get sweaty and my stomach does these weird little flips. It's not the apartment that makes me nervous, though the place is definitely intimidating with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art that probably cost more than my car. No, it's him. Joe. If this story hits you, drop a heart in the comments. Joe Martinez is 35, a successful lawyer who works for one of those big firms downtown, the kind where they wear $1,000 suits and make decisions that affect entire companies. He's got this presence about him, this confidence that comes from knowing exactly who he is and what he wants. Dark hair that's always perfectly styled, warm brown eyes that seem to see right through you, and a smile that could probably convince a jury of anything. He's the kind of man who should intimidate me, and he does, but not in the way you'd expect. I knock on his door, the same 3 gentle raps I always do, and wait. The sound of footsteps approaches, and then the door swings open, revealing Joe in what I've come to think of as his casual Friday look. Dark jeans that fit him perfectly, a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, and bare feet. There's something about seeing him without shoes that makes him seem more human, more approachable, though no less attractive. Alex, he says, and the way he says my name, like he's been looking forward to hearing it roll off his tongue, sends a little shiver down my spine. Right on time, as always. Hey, Joe, I manage, hoping my voice sounds steadier than I feel. Got your usual order here, plus those fancy olives you requested. He steps aside to let me in, and I wheel the cart into his spacious living room. The apartment is exactly what you'd expect from a successful lawyer, all clean lines and expensive furniture, but there are personal touches that make it feel lived in. Books scattered on the coffee table, a half-finished crossword puzzle, a coffee mug with a chip in the handle that somehow survived among all the perfection. You know, Joe says, closing the door behind me, I've been thinking about those olives all week. There's something about the way you described them last time that made them sound irresistible. I pause in unpacking the groceries, glancing over at him. He's leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I can't quite read. I just said they were imported from Greece and stuffed with garlic. Exactly, he says, and there's something in his voice, something warm and teasing that makes my chest tighten. The way you said it, though. Like you actually cared about whether I'd enjoy them. I do care, more than I should, more than makes sense for someone who's just doing his job. But I can't exactly say that, so I focus on arranging his groceries on the counter, trying to ignore the way he's looking at me. Well, customer satisfaction is important. Is that what this is? He asks, moving closer. Customer satisfaction? The question hangs in the air between us, loaded with implications I'm not sure I'm ready to face. I've been asking myself the same thing for weeks now, trying to figure out why these deliveries have become the highlight of my schedule, why I find myself taking extra care with Joe's orders, why I sometimes drive past his building on my days off just hoping to catch a glimpse of him. I should get these perishables in your fridge, I say, grabbing the milk and yogurt, anything to give my hands something to do. Of course, Joe says, but he doesn't move away. Instead, he opens the refrigerator door for me, standing close enough that I can smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that makes me want to lean in closer. You know, Alex, I've been wondering something. Yeah, I ask, trying to focus on organizing his fridge and not on the way his proximity is making my skin feel electric. Do you enjoy your job? Delivering groceries, I mean. It seems like you put a lot of thought into it, more than most people would. I pause, a container of Greek yogurt in my hand, and consider the question. It's not something I expected him to ask, and the genuine curiosity in his voice catches me off guard. I don't know if enjoy is the right word. It's just a job, you know? Pays the bills while I figure out what I actually want to do with my life. And what do you want to do? The question is simple, But something about the way he asks it, like my answer actually matters to him, makes me want to give him a real response instead of the usual deflection. I'm not sure yet. I have a degree in English, but that doesn't exactly open a lot of doors. I've been thinking about maybe going back to school, getting into teaching or something. English, Joe says, and I can hear the interest in his voice. That explains it. Explains what? The way you talk about things. Even groceries. You have this way of making everything sound more interesting than it probably is. I feel heat creep up my neck. Is he complimenting me? It feels like a compliment, but I'm not sure how to respond. I think you're giving me too much credit. I don't think I am, he says quietly, and when I look up from the fridge, he's watching me with an intensity that makes my breath catch. You have a gift, Alex. The way you see things, the way you describe them. It's special. There's something in his eyes, something that makes my heart race and my palms sweat, something that feels dangerous and exciting and completely impossible. He's a successful lawyer, sophisticated and polished and probably straight, and I'm just the guy who brings his groceries. This can't be what I think it is. I should finish up here, I say, turning back to the groceries, but my hands are shaking slightly as I unpack the last few items. Alex, Joe says, and his voice is softer now, almost hesitant. Can I ask you something else? Sure. Do you have plans tonight? The question stops me cold. I turn to look at him, searching his face for any sign of what he's thinking, what he's really asking. Tonight? I know it's presumptuous, he says quickly, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that's unexpectedly vulnerable. But I was thinking of making dinner, trying out some of these ingredients you've been recommending. I thought maybe you'd like to stay, if you're not busy. As a thank you for always taking such good care of my orders. My mind races, trying to process what's happening. Is he asking me to dinner? Is this a date? Or is he just being friendly, trying to tip me in a way that doesn't involve money? I want to say yes so badly it physically hurts, but I'm terrified of misreading the situation, of making a fool of myself. I don't want to impose, I say carefully. You wouldn't be, he says immediately. I'd like the company, actually. I spend most of my evenings alone, and I thought it might be nice to cook for someone who actually appreciates good food. There's something lonely in the way he says it that tugs at my heart. This successful, attractive man who seems to have everything is lonely. It makes him seem more human, more real, and suddenly saying yes feels less like taking a risk and more like the right thing to do. Okay, I hear myself saying, I like that. The smile that spreads across Joe's face is brilliant, transforming his entire expression. Really? That's great. I was hoping you'd say yes, but I wasn't sure. Why weren't you sure? He hesitates, and for a moment, I see something vulnerable in his expression, something that makes him look younger than his 35 years. I don't usually do this kind of thing. Invite people over. I'm not great at the whole social thing outside of work. It's hard to believe, looking at him. He seems so confident, so sure of himself, but I guess everyone has their insecurities. Well, I'm honored to be the exception. You are, he says, and there's something in his voice that makes me think he means more than just the dinner invitation. I finish putting away the last of his groceries while Joe moves around the kitchen, pulling out ingredients and talking about what he's planning to make. He's decided on a pasta dish with the fresh basil and tomatoes I brought, along with the imported olives and some cheese that costs more per pound than I make in a day. Watching him cook is mesmerizing. His movements are precise and confident, the same way he probably is in a courtroom, but there's something almost sensual about the way he handles the ingredients, the care he takes with each step. Can I help with anything? I ask, feeling useless standing there watching him work. Actually, yes, he says, glancing over at me. Would you mind opening that bottle of wine? I thought we could let it breathe while we cook. Wine. Of course there's wine. I should have expected that, but somehow the idea of drinking wine with Joe, of sitting across from him at dinner like we're on a date, makes everything feel more real and more terrifying. I open the bottle, a red wine with a label I can't pronounce, and pour 2 glasses. Joe accepts his with a smile that makes my stomach flutter, and we clink glasses in a toast. To new friendships, Joe says, and I try not to read too much into the way he emphasizes the word new, or the way his eyes linger on mine as we drink. The wine is incredible, rich and complex with flavors I don't have words for, and I tell him so. He laughs, A sound that's warm and genuine and makes me want to say something funny just to hear it again. You really do have a way with words, he says. Most people would just say it's good. Most people probably know more about wine than I do, I admit. This is definitely not in my usual price range. What is in your usual price range? He asks. And there's no judgment in the question, just curiosity. Beer, I say honestly. Cheap beer, usually. Sometimes I splurge on the good stuff, but not often. Nothing wrong with beer, Joe says. I went through a craft beer phase a few years ago. Spent way too much money trying every IPA in the city. What changed? He shrugs, stirring the sauce. I guess I got tired of drinking alone. Wine feels more civilized when you're by yourself, less sad somehow. There's that loneliness again, and I find myself wanting to ask more, to understand why someone like Joe would spend his evenings alone. But before I can figure out how to phrase the question without being intrusive, he's moving on, asking me about my favorite foods, my family, my life outside of work. We talk while he cooks, and I'm surprised by how easy it is. Joe is nothing like what I expected from a high-powered lawyer. He's funny and self-deprecating, asking genuine questions about my life and listening to my answers like they actually matter to him. He tells me about growing up in a big family in Texas, about law school and his first job at a firm that worked him 80 hours a week, about deciding to move to the city for a fresh start. What about relationships? I ask before I can stop myself, then immediately regret it. Sorry, that's none of my business. It's okay, Joe says, but his smile falters slightly. Not much to say there, really. I was with someone for a while, but it didn't work out. Work got in the way, or maybe I let it get in the way. I'm not always great at balancing things. Someone. He said someone, not some woman. It could mean anything, but there's something about the way he said it, the careful neutrality of the word, that makes me wonder. Or maybe I'm just projecting, seeing what I want to see because the alternative is too disappointing to consider. What about you? He asks. Anyone special in your life? No, I say, maybe a little too quickly. I mean, I've dated, but nothing serious lately. It's hard to meet people when you spend most of your time driving around delivering groceries. I imagine it would be, Joe says, and there's something in his voice that makes me look up at him. He's watching me with that intense expression again, like he's trying to figure something out. You must get lonely. Sometimes, I admit. But I'm used to it, I guess. I've always been kind of a loner. By choice. The question catches me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, do you prefer being alone? Or is it just easier than putting yourself out there? It's a perceptive question, one that hits closer to home than I'm comfortable with. The truth is, I do prefer being alone most of the time, but not because I don't want connection. It's because wanting connection with the wrong people, or in the wrong way, has gotten me hurt before. It's easier to keep my distance than to risk that kind of pain again. Both, I guess, I say finally. It's complicated. Joe nods like he understands, and maybe he does. Maybe that's why he spends his evenings alone too. Why he invited me to dinner instead of calling one of his lawyer friends, or whatever it is successful people do on Friday nights. The pasta is ready, and Joe serves it with a flourish, presenting the dish like he's proud of what he's created. It smells incredible, and when I taste it, I can't help but make an appreciative sound that makes Joe grin. Good, he asks. Amazing, I say honestly. Where did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother, he says, settling into the chair across from me. She insisted that everyone in the family learn to cook, boys included. Said it was a life skill, not a gender role. Smart woman. She was. She would have liked you, I think. The comment is casual, but it makes my chest tighten with something warm and hopeful. Yeah? Why's that? She always said the best people were the ones who paid attention to details, who cared about doing things right even when no one was watching. That's you, isn't it? The way you handle my deliveries, the care you take with everything. It shows. I feel heat creep up my neck again. I just try to do my job well. It's more than that, Joe says quietly. You care about people, even people you barely know. That's rare. We eat in comfortable silence for a while, the wine making everything feel warm and relaxed. The food is incredible, but more than that, the whole experience feels surreal. Here I am, sitting in this beautiful apartment, sharing dinner and wine with a man who's way out of my league, and somehow it feels natural, like this is where I'm supposed to be. Can I ask you something? Joe says eventually, refilling our wine glasses. Sure. What made you take this job? Delivering groceries, I mean. With your English degree, you could probably do other things. It's a fair question, one I've asked myself plenty of times. Honestly, I needed something flexible while I figured out my next move. I thought it would be temporary, just a few months to pay the bills and give me time to think. But it's been over a year now, and I'm still thinking. Maybe you're overthinking, Joe suggests. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones we make instinctively, without analyzing every possible outcome. Is that how you became a lawyer? Instinct. Joe laughs, shaking his head. God, no. That was the opposite of instinct. That was me trying to please my parents, trying to choose the most practical, respectable career I could think of. It worked out, mostly, but it wasn't what I dreamed of doing when I was a kid. What did you dream of doing? Writing, he says, and there's something wistful in his voice. I wanted to be a novelist, write the great American novel, all that cliché stuff. I even started a book in college, but law school killed any creative ambitions I had. It's not too late, I say. You could still write. Could I? Joe asks, and there's something vulnerable in the question. Sometimes I think about it, but then I remember how long it's been since I wrote anything that wasn't a legal brief. I'm probably too rusty, too set in my ways. You're 35, not 75, I point out. And besides, being a lawyer probably gave you skills that would make you a better writer. You know how to research, how to build an argument, how to tell a compelling story. Joe looks at me with surprise, like the idea hadn't occurred to him before. You really think so? I know so. You've been telling me stories all evening, about your family, your grandmother, your life. You're a natural storyteller, Joe. You just need to give yourself permission to try. Something shifts in his expression, something hopeful and determined, and I feel a surge of pride at being the one to put that look on his face. What about you? Have you thought about writing? Sometimes, I admit. I keep a journal, write down observations about people, places, things that interest me. But I don't know if I have anything important to say. Everyone has something important to say, Joe says firmly. The trick is finding the courage to say it. We're looking at each other across the table, and suddenly the air feels charged with something I can't name. There's an intensity in Joe's eyes that makes my heart race, and I have the crazy thought that he's about to reach across the table and take my hand. Instead, he clears his throat and looks away, the moment broken. More wine? He asks, already reaching for the bottle. I should probably slow down, I say, though part of me wants to keep drinking, wants to see where this evening leads if I let my inhibitions slip a little further. I have to drive home eventually. You could stay, Joe says quickly, then seems to realize how that sounds. I mean, I have a guest room. If you don't want to drive after drinking, it's no trouble. Stay the night. In Joe's apartment. The idea is both thrilling and terrifying, and I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, Joe says, and there's something earnest in his voice that makes me believe him. I'd like you to stay, actually. It's been a long time since I've had company, and I'm enjoying this. I am too, more than I should, more than is probably wise. But looking at Joe, seeing the hope in his eyes, I can't bring myself to say no. Okay. Thank you. The smile that spreads across Joe's face is radiant, and I feel something warm unfurl in my chest. We finish dinner and clean up together, moving around the kitchen in a comfortable rhythm that feels surprisingly natural. Joe washes while I dry, and every time our hands brush as he passes me a dish, I feel a little jolt of electricity. So, Joe says as we finish up, what do you usually do on Friday nights? Not much, I admit. Watch Netflix, read, sometimes go out with friends, but not often. What about you? Pretty much the same, minus the friends part, Joe says with a self-deprecating laugh. I'm not great at maintaining friendships outside of work. Too much of a workaholic, I guess. That sounds lonely. It is, Joe admits, leaning against the counter. But it's easier than trying to explain why I can't make plans because I'm working late again, or why I have to cancel at the last minute because a case needs attention. After a while, people stop inviting you. There's something sad in the way he says it, and I find myself wanting to comfort him somehow. Their loss. Is it? Joe asks, and there's something vulnerable in the question. Sometimes I think I'm just not good at being a friend. Too selfish, too focused on work. I don't believe that, I say firmly. You've been nothing but kind to me, and you barely know me. You invited me to dinner. You're letting me stay the night. You listen when I talk like what I'm saying actually matters. That's not selfish behavior. Joe looks at me with something like surprise, as if the idea that he might be a good person is foreign to him. You really think that? I know it, I say, and I mean it. Maybe you just haven't found the right people yet. People who understand that work is important to you, who don't take it personally when you have to prioritize it sometimes. Maybe, Joe says quietly, but he's looking at me with an expression I can't quite read, something intense and searching that makes my breath catch. We move to the living room, settling on opposite ends of Joe's expensive couch with fresh glasses of wine. The conversation flows easily, touching on books we've read, movies we've loved, places we've traveled or want to travel. I learned that Joe has been to Europe twice for work, but never had time to actually see anything beyond hotel rooms and conference rooms. I tell him about the summer I spent backpacking through national parks, sleeping in my car, and living on granola bars and instant coffee. That sounds amazing, Joe says wistfully. I can't remember the last time I did something just for the adventure of it. Why don't you? I ask. Take a vacation, I mean. Really take one, not a work trip. I don't know, Joe says, swirling his wine. I guess I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I've been working so much for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to relax. It's like riding a bike, I say. You never really forget. Is it? Joe asks, and there's something almost hopeful in his voice. Maybe you could teach me. The words hang in the air between us, loaded with implications I'm not sure either of us is ready to examine. There's something in Joe's eyes, something that makes my pulse quicken and my mouth go dry. He's looking at me like I'm something precious, something he wants but isn't sure he's allowed to have. Joe, I start, not sure what I'm going to say, but he cuts me off. I should show you to the guest room, he says abruptly, standing up. It's getting late, and you probably want to get some sleep. The moment is broken, and I feel a mix of disappointment and relief. Part of me was hoping he'd say something, do something to acknowledge whatever this is between us, but another part of me is grateful for the reprieve. I'm not sure I'm ready for whatever conversation we were about to have. The guest room is beautiful, all clean lines and expensive furniture like the rest of the apartment. Joe shows me where the towels are, points out the bathroom, asks if I need anything else. He's being the perfect host, but there's something stilted about it now, like he's putting distance between us. Thank you, I say as he lingers in the doorway. For dinner, for letting me stay. This has been really nice. It has, Joe agrees, and for a moment, his careful composure slips, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. Alex, He stops, shaking his head. Never mind. Sleep well. He's gone before I can ask what he was going to say, leaving me alone in the guest room with my racing thoughts and the lingering scent of his cologne. I change into the t-shirt and boxers I keep in my delivery bag for emergencies, brush my teeth with the spare toothbrush Joe provided, and lie down in the impossibly comfortable bed. But sleep doesn't come easily. I keep replaying the evening in my mind, analyzing every look, every word, every moment of tension between us. Was I imagining things, or was there something real there? The way Joe looked at me sometimes, the careful way he chose his words, the invitation to stay the night, it all feels like more than just friendliness, but I can't be sure. And even if there was something, what then? Joe is successful, sophisticated, probably straight. I'm just the guy who delivers his groceries. We live in completely different worlds, and I can't imagine how we'd bridge that gap even if we both wanted to. But God, do I want to? Lying there in his guest room, surrounded by his space and his scent, I can't deny the attraction I've been fighting for months. It's not just that Joe is attractive, though he definitely is. It's the way he listens when I talk, the way he seems genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions, the way he makes me feel like I matter. I haven't felt that way in a long time, maybe ever. I must eventually fall asleep because I wake up to the smell of coffee and bacon, sunlight streaming through the guest room windows. For a moment, I'm disoriented, not sure where I am, but then it all comes flooding back. Joe's apartment, dinner, wine, the charged moments and careful distances. I get dressed quickly and make my way to the kitchen, where Joe is standing at the stove in pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair mussed from sleep. He looks younger like this, more approachable, and devastatingly attractive in a way that makes my chest tighten. Morning, he says, glancing over at me with a smile that seemed slightly shy. I hope you don't mind. I made breakfast. I figured you might be hungry. You don't have to keep feeding me, I say, but I'm already moving toward the coffee pot, drawn by the rich smell. I want to, Joe says simply. Besides, I don't often get to cook for someone who actually appreciates it. We eat breakfast together, and the conversation is easier than I expected after the tension of last night. Joe asks about my plans for the weekend, tells me about a case he's working on, mentions a book he thinks I'd like. It's comfortable and domestic in a way that makes my heart ache with want. I should probably get going, I say eventually, though I don't want to. I could stay here all day, talking with Joe, watching him move around his kitchen, pretending this is my life instead of just a brief glimpse into his. Of course, Joe says, but I catch a flash of disappointment in his eyes. I'll walk you out. We make our way to the door, and I'm acutely aware that this might be the last time I'm in Joe's apartment like this, as a guest instead of just the delivery guy. The thought makes me inexplicably sad. Thank you again, I say as Joe opens the door. For everything. Dinner was incredible, and the company was even better. Thank you for staying, Joe says. I had a really good time, Alex. Better than I've had in a long time. We're standing close together in the doorway, and I can smell his cologne again, can see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. There's a moment where neither of us moves, where the air between us feels charged with possibility, and I think he might say something, do something to acknowledge what's happening between us. Instead, he steps back, putting distance between us. I'll see you next week? For the delivery. Yeah, I say, trying to hide my disappointment. Same time as always. I make it halfway to the elevator before I hear Joe call my name. I turn back to see him standing in his doorway, looking uncertain and hopeful and vulnerable all at once. Alex, he says, and then seems to lose his nerve. Have a good weekend. You too, I say, and then the elevator doors are closing between us, and I'm left with nothing but the memory of the way he said my name and the lingering scent of his cologne on my clothes. The weekend passes in a blur of overthinking and second-guessing. I replay every moment of Friday night, analyzing every word and gesture until I've convinced myself I imagined the whole thing. Joe was just being friendly, just being a good host. The tension I felt was all in my head, a product of wishful thinking and too much wine. By Monday, I've almost convinced myself that things will go back to normal, that Friday night was an anomaly and our next interaction will be strictly professional. But when I knock on Joe's door that afternoon, the smile he gives me is warm and genuine, and there's something in his eyes that makes my heart skip. Alex, he says, and again, there's something in the way he says my name that makes me think I didn't imagine everything. How was your weekend? Good, I say, wheeling the card into his apartment. Quiet. What about you? I actually took your advice, Joe says, closing the door behind me. I started writing again. Just a few pages, nothing major, but it felt good. The pride in his voice makes me smile. That's amazing, Joe. What are you writing about? I'm not sure yet, he admits. Just observations, character sketches, things like that. But you were right about having something to say. I think I do. I just need to figure out how to say it. We fall into our usual routine of unpacking groceries, but there's something different about it this time. Joe stands closer than usual, and every time our hands brush as I pass him something, I feel that same jolt of electricity. He asks about my weekend, tells me about his, and the conversation flows as easily as it did at dinner. I keep thinking about what you said, Joe says as I'm putting the last few items in his fridge. About finding the right people, people who understand that work is important but don't take it personally. Yeah, I ask, trying to keep my voice casual. I think you might be one of those people, Joe says quietly. You seem to understand things about me that most people don't. I turn to look at him, and he's watching me with that intense expression again, the one that makes my breath catch and my heart race. Joe, I know this is complicated, he says quickly. I know we barely know each other, and I know I'm probably reading too much into things. But I can't stop thinking about Friday night, about how easy it was to talk to you, how right it felt having you here. My heart is hammering against my ribs, and I can barely breathe. Is this really happening? Is Joe actually saying what I think he's saying? It felt right to me too, I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. Something shifts in Joe's expression, something hopeful and determined. Would you like to have dinner again? Tonight? Maybe. I know it's short notice, but Yes, I say before he can finish the question. I'd love to. The smile that spreads across Joe's face is brilliant, and I feel something warm and bright unfurl in my chest. This is happening. Whatever this is between us, it's real, and Joe feels it too. Good, Joe says, moving closer. I was hoping you'd say that. We're standing close together now, close enough that I can see the way his pulse is jumping in his throat, can feel the heat radiating from his body. There's something electric in the air between us, something that makes me feel dizzy and breathless and more alive than I've felt in years. Alex, Joe says softly, and there's something in his voice that makes me look up at him. His eyes are dark and intense, and he's looking at me like I'm something precious, something he wants but isn't sure he's allowed to have. Yeah, I breathe. I need you to know something, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. This isn't just about being lonely or wanting company. You do something to me, Alex. You make me feel things I haven't felt in a long time, maybe ever. My heart stops, then starts again double time. Joe, I know it's crazy, he continues, reaching up to cup my face with one hand. I know we barely know each other, and I know this could complicate everything, but I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just friendship. His thumb brushes across my cheekbone, and I lean into the touch without thinking. What do you feel for me? Everything, Joe says simply. Want, need, affection, desire. Things I didn't think I was capable of feeling anymore. I can't breathe, can't think, can't do anything but stare into Joe's eyes and try to process what he's telling me. This beautiful, successful, incredible man feels something for me. For me, the guy who delivers his groceries, who has nothing to offer him but attention and affection and a willingness to listen. I feel it too. I whisper, because I can't not tell him. Can't let this moment pass without being honest. I've been feeling it for months, Joe. Every time I come here, every time I see you, it gets stronger. Joe's eyes close briefly, like he's overwhelmed by relief. Thank God, he breathes. I was so afraid I was imagining it, that I was seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was really there. You weren't imagining it, I assure him. It's real, Joe. Whatever this is, it's real. He opens his eyes and looks at me with such intensity that I feel like he's seeing straight through to my soul. Can I kiss you? He asks, his voice rough with want. I nod, not trusting my voice, and then Joe's lips are on mine, soft and warm and perfect. The kiss is gentle at first, tentative, like he's giving me a chance to change my mind. But when I kiss him back, when I let him know that this is what I want too, he deepens it, his other hand coming up to frame my face. Kissing Joe is like coming home and going on an adventure at the same time. It's familiar and new, comforting and exciting, everything I didn't know I was looking for until I found it. He tastes like coffee and something uniquely him, and I could kiss him for hours and never get tired of it. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard, and Joe rests his forehead against mine. That was yeah, I agree, because I don't have words for what that was either. I've wanted to do that for so long, Joe admits. Every time you came here, I'd think about it, wonder what it would be like. And I ask, smiling. Better than I imagined, Joe says, pressing another soft kiss to my lips. So much better. We stand there for a moment, just holding each other, and I feel like my world has shifted on its axis. Everything looks the same, but everything feels different, charged with possibility and hope, and the promise of something beautiful. So, Joe says eventually, pulling back to look at me. Dinner. Dinner. I agree, grinning at him. But maybe we should order in this time. I'm not sure I can concentrate on cooking right now. Joe laughs, the sound warm and happy and free. Good point. Pizza. Perfect. We order pizza from a place Joe knows, something fancy with ingredients I can't pronounce, and while we wait for it to arrive, we sit on his couch and talk. But it's different now, charged with the knowledge of what we've admitted to each other, what we've started. I have to ask, Joe says, playing with my fingers where our hands are linked between us. Are you okay with this? With me being a man, I mean? It's a fair question, and I appreciate that he's asking it directly instead of assuming. More than okay, I tell him honestly. I've known I was attracted to men for years, Joe. I just haven't acted on it much. Why not? I consider the question, trying to figure out how to explain the complicated mix of fear and uncertainty and social conditioning that's kept me from fully exploring this part of myself. I guess I was scared, I say finally. Scared of what it meant. Scared of how people would react. scared of getting hurt. It was easier to just ignore it. And now? Joe asks gently. Now I don't want to ignore it anymore, I say, looking into his eyes. I don't want to ignore this, whatever it is between us. Joe brings our joined hands to his lips and presses a soft kiss to my knuckles. I'm glad, he says, because I don't think I could ignore it either, even if I wanted to. The pizza arrives, and we eat it sitting on Joe's couch, talking and laughing and stealing kisses between bites. It's domestic and comfortable and perfect, and I find myself thinking that I could get used to this, to being here with Joe, to being part of his life. What happens now? I ask eventually, when the pizza is gone and we're curled up together on the couch, Joe's arm around my shoulders. I don't know, Joe admits. I've never done this before, Alex. I've never felt this way about someone, never wanted to explore something like this. We could take it slow, I suggest. Figure it out as we go. I'd like that, Joe says, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. I'd like that a lot. We spend the rest of the evening talking, sharing stories and dreams and fears, learning about each other in a way that feels intimate and precious. Joe tells me about his first crush, a boy in his high school English class who never knew he existed. I tell him about my college roommate, the one who made me realize that what I felt for him was more than friendship, even though nothing ever happened between us. Do you think we would have found each other eventually? Joe asks as the evening winds down. If you hadn't been delivering my groceries, I mean? It's an interesting question, one I've wondered about myself. I don't know, I say honestly. We move in pretty different circles. But I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that something this good doesn't just happen by accident. Maybe it wasn't an accident, Joe says thoughtfully. Maybe it was just the universe's way of bringing us together. You believe in that? Fate, destiny, all that. I didn't used to, Joe admits. But sitting here with you, thinking about all the things that had to happen for us to meet, for you to be the one delivering my groceries, for me to work up the courage to invite you to dinner, it's hard not to believe in something bigger than coincidence. I know what he means. The odds of us finding each other, of this connection existing between us, seem impossibly small. But here we are, and it feels right in a way that nothing else in my life ever has. I should probably go, I say reluctantly as it gets late. I have deliveries tomorrow. Stay, Joe says immediately. Please. I know it's presumptuous, but I don't want this night to end yet. I want to stay too, more than anything, but I'm also aware that we're moving fast, that everything between us is new and fragile and worth protecting. Are you sure? I'm sure, Joe says firmly. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for, Alex. I just want you here, want to fall asleep knowing you're close. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability, breaks down any remaining resistance I might have had. Okay, I say. I'll stay. This time, Joe doesn't offer me the guest room. Instead, he leads me to his bedroom, a space that's somehow both masculine and elegant, all dark wood and soft fabrics. He gives me clothes to sleep in, one of his t-shirts and a pair of shorts, and I change in his bathroom while he gets ready for bed. When I come out, Joe is already under the covers, and he lifts them in invitation. I slide in beside him, and he immediately pulls me close, wrapping his arms around me like he's afraid I might disappear. Is this okay? He asks, his voice soft in the darkness. Perfect, I say, and I mean it. Being here with Joe, feeling his warmth and strength surrounding me, is better than perfect. It's everything I didn't know I was missing. We talk quietly in the darkness, sharing whispered confessions and gentle touches, until eventually Joe's breathing evens out and I know he's asleep. I lie there for a while, listening to the sound of his breathing, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my back, and I think about how much my life has changed in the span of a few hours. This morning, I was just Alex, the grocery delivery guy with a secret crush on one of his customers. Tonight, I'm lying in Joe's bed, held in his arms, knowing that he feels the same way about me that I feel about him. It's overwhelming and wonderful and slightly terrifying all at once. I wake up the next morning to Joe pressing soft kisses to my shoulder, his arms still wrapped around my waist. Morning, he murmurs against my skin, his voice rough with sleep. Morning, I reply, turning in his arms to face him. His hair is mussed, and there's a crease on his cheek from the pillow, and he's never looked more beautiful to me. How did you sleep? He asks, reaching up to brush a strand of hair away from my forehead. Better than I have in months, I admit. You. Same, Joe says, smiling. I think I could get used to waking up like this. Yeah, I ask, feeling hope bloom in my chest. Yeah, Joe confirms, leaning in to kiss me softly. If you'll let me. I'd like that, I say against his lips. I'd like that a lot. We lie there for a while, talking and kissing and just enjoying being close to each other. Eventually, though, reality intrudes, and I have to get up and get ready for work. Joe makes coffee while I shower and change back into my delivery uniform, and we eat breakfast together like it's something we've been doing for years instead of days. What's your schedule like today? Joe asks as I'm getting ready to leave. Pretty full, I admit. I've got deliveries until about 6, then I'm free. Would you like to come back here when you're done? Joe asks, and there's something almost shy in the way he asks it. I could make dinner, or we could order in again. Whatever you want. The fact that he wants to see me again, that this isn't just a one-time thing, makes my heart soar. I'd love to, I say. But are you sure? I don't want to monopolize all your time. You're not monopolizing anything, Joe says firmly. I want to spend time with you, Alex. As much time as you'll give me. I kiss him goodbye at the door, a soft, lingering kiss that makes me want to call in sick and spend the day in his arms instead. But I have responsibilities, and Joe has work too, so I force myself to leave, carrying the memory of his smile and the promise of seeing him again that evening. The day passes in a blur of deliveries and daydreams. I find myself smiling at random moments, replaying conversations and kisses, thinking about the way Joe looked at me like I was something precious. My coworkers notice my good mood, teasing me about whatever's got me so happy, but I just smile and deflect their questions. This thing with Joe is too new, too precious to share with anyone else yet. When my shift ends, I drive straight to Joe's building, my heart racing with anticipation. He must have been watching for me because he opens the door before I can knock, pulling me inside and into his arms for a kiss that makes my knees weak. I missed you, he says against my lips, and the simple honesty of it makes my chest tight with emotion. I missed you too, I reply, because it's true. Even though it's only been a few hours, I missed him, missed being close to him, missed the way he makes me feel like I matter. We spend the evening cooking together, Joe teaching me how to make the pasta sauce his grandmother used to make. He stands behind me as I stir, his arms around my waist, occasionally pressing kisses to my neck that make me lose track of what I'm doing. It's domestic and intimate and perfect, and I find myself falling a little more in love with him with every shared smile and gentle touch. Alex, Joe says as we're cleaning up after dinner, his voice serious enough to make me look up at him. Yeah, I want you to know that this isn't casual for me, he says, meeting my eyes. I know we've only been, whatever this is, for a couple of days, but it doesn't feel casual. It feels important. My heart skips a beat. It feels important to me too, I say softly. Really important. Relief flashes across Joe's face. Good, he says. Because I was thinking, maybe we should talk about what this is, what we want it to be. It's a conversation I've been both anticipating and dreading, because as much as I want this to be something real and lasting, I'm also terrified of presuming too much, of wanting more than Joe is ready to give. What do you want it to be? I ask, turning to face him fully. Joe takes a deep breath, like he's gathering courage. I want it to be everything, he says quietly. I want you in my life, Alex. Not just for dinner dates and sleepovers, but really in my life. I want to introduce you to people, take you places, build something real with you. The words hit me like a physical force, and I have to grip the counter to steady myself. Joe, I know it's fast, he says quickly. I know we barely know each other, and I know there are a million practical considerations we haven't talked about. But I can't help how I feel about you, and I don't want to pretend it's less than it is. It's not too fast, I say, finding my voice. And you're right, it is everything. What I feel for you, it's not just attraction or infatuation. It's deeper than that, stronger than that. Joe steps closer, reaching up to cup my face in his hands. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm falling in love with you. I whisper, the words tumbling out before I can stop them. I know it's crazy. I know it's too soon, but I can't help it. You make me feel things I've never felt before, Joe. You make me want things I didn't know I wanted. Joe's eyes close briefly, and when he opens them, they're bright with unshed tears. Thank God, he breathes. Because I'm falling in love with you too, Alex. Have been since that first dinner, maybe even before. He kisses me then, deep and desperate and full of promise, and I kiss him back with everything I have. When we break apart, We're both breathing hard, and Joe rests his forehead against mine. So what now? I ask, echoing the question I asked last night. Now we figure it out together, Joe says. All of it. The practical stuff, the complicated stuff, the scary stuff. We figure it out because what we have is worth figuring out. It is, I agree. It really is. We spend the rest of the evening making plans, talking about the future in a way that feels both surreal and completely natural. Joe wants to meet my friends, wants me to meet his colleagues. He talks about taking time off work, about the vacation he's never taken, about all the places he wants to show me. I tell him about my dreams, my fears, my hopes for what my life could become. I have an idea, Joe says as we're getting ready for bed. About your writing. Yeah. What if you wrote about this? About us, about how we met, about what it's like to fall in love when you least expect it. The suggestion catches me off guard. You think people would want to read about that? I think people would want to read about anything you wrote, Joe says seriously. But yes, I think they'd want to read about this. About real love, about taking chances, about finding someone who sees you for who you really are. The idea is both thrilling and terrifying. Writing about us, about this, would mean putting our story out into the world, making it public in a way that feels vulnerable and scary. But it would also mean honoring what we have, celebrating it, sharing the joy of it with others. Would you be okay with that? I ask. With me writing about us? I'd be honored, Joe says simply. As long as you change the names to protect the innocent. I laugh, pulling him close. I love you, I say, the words coming easier now that I've said them once. I love you too, Joe replies, and the simple truth of it fills me with a happiness so complete it almost hurts. We fall asleep wrapped around each other, and I dream of the story I might write, the one about a grocery delivery guy and a lonely lawyer who found each other against all odds. In my dream, it's a bestseller, and Joe and I are sitting in a bookstore somewhere, watching people discover our story, watching them fall in love with love the way we fell in love with each other. When I wake up the next morning, Joe is already awake, watching me with soft eyes and a gentle smile. What were you dreaming about? He asks, brushing hair away from my forehead. Us, I say honestly. Our story. Good dream. The best, I say, leaning in to kiss him. The absolute best. And as Joe kisses me back, as the morning light streams through his bedroom windows, I know that whatever happens next, whatever challenges we face or obstacles we encounter, we'll face them together. Because what we have is real, and it's strong, and it's worth fighting for. I may have started out as just the guy who delivers groceries, but somehow, impossibly, I've become the man who gets to love Joe Martinez. And that's a story worth telling, worth living, worth everything. The future stretches out ahead of us, full of possibility and promise, and I can't wait to see where it takes us. Together.